on, I just got to get my seat. Are we ready?
We are ready.
Chris and Kay, your parents, children, Chris, Kay, anybody else involved with this? Man, Sales Issues, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I ask this bless each and every one here, especially the children, for taking this time to do this. The Salelo, the old people always said, they are the buds, they are the future. So Chris, I really want to thank you for doing this, for inviting me in. Then I ask for your blessings, your protection upon this here Zoom meeting. I thank Chris for being so patient. I'm not a techie person. Thank you, Chris. Oh, Lord God, bless each and every child, each and every parent that stands alongside their child. Whatever race, color, creed, race, language that they belong. You treasure each life so much. You protect, guide, and defend each one so much. Thank you so much, Lord God, for this beautiful day. Thank you for Tomo, the land. Thank you for the buildings, the RBCM where Chris is. I ask them, especially Chris, all those like-minded like Chris, to help them during this changeover with what happened last week, Lord God. I ask you to send your mighty warring angels to stop the racism once and for all. May this be the seed planted in your victory to stop the racism, which has got to stop, and you are in control, Lord God. I thank you so much for your defending us, being our protectors, my one true God of all heaven and all of earth, of all nations, tribes, colors, creeds, races, and languages. Right. Gracias, amigos, Islitos, Chris, Kay, Southama is the night today's chest. Southama is my name for my grandma from Chatham Island, where I grew up, born and raised for the first 10 years of my life. I thank God for this awesome blessings of learning our teachings and the culture to be able to carry it on to the little ones. Because the old ones didn't just think of 10 years from now, or we're thinking 100 years, 200 years, of the children to the 6th and 7th generation. Thank you for this, Lord God. Again, I welcome to the Common Territory, Songhees territory, the land that the Lord created for all of us. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Sethama. I really appreciate you being here, being such an important friend and partner through these many projects that we've done together, and for giving a sort of a proper welcome to us as a Saleho, as an old one, the Songhees Nation. Just thank you so much for everything that you do. For everything that you do. So And I particularly want to ask both you and Kay here today, because this program today for RBCM at Home is about a mural that we created last year. It was around this time last year in our learning center here. So I'm going to share my screen again, and Sethama, you can't, or maybe you can see if you're still on Zoom. But I'm just showing everyone what actually, I'm going to scoot forward a little bit. So this is the wall that was in our learning center here at the museum. And if you look at it, it's kind of ugly. There's not much to it. There's wires and other things, and it's a big wall within the museum. So we wanted to make sure that we wanted to make it look more pretty, and we also wanted to make it look more vibrant. And we wanted it to be an opportunity when we created a mural to also be an opportunity to bring together community. So before I even started, I wanted to think like who would be a good artist to work with, who would be able to bring together community in a good way. So I asked my friend Kay Gallivan, to be the lead artist. So hello, Kay.
Hi.
So Kay, when you're a mural artist, so how did you get into mural art making? How did you start in on that process?
Well, I always thought that murals and street art were so beautiful and so nice because, you know, we tend to paint walls, these colors like gray and beige and these muted colors, but the people who live in cities are actually so colorful and filled with personality. And so ever since I was young, I've been really attracted to the walls that show that personality, that look as colorful as you know, as people do, as the people that inhabit them, the building. And but I never thought of myself as an artist because I was like, there are already so many good artists. Like, why would I make a fool of myself by painting something that, you know, that isn't as nice as something that somebody else could paint. And so I never did it myself, even though I loved murals. And then one day, a friend of mine invited me to paint a mural with her, and I had such a fun day that my whole way of looking at it changed. And I realized that I needed to paint murals, not because they might be the best mural ever, but because it makes me happy, because the process of creating gives me so much joy. And so I was like, well, I mean, I guess I'll have to paint bad murals, and that's kind of too bad for everybody else, but it makes me happy. And so I just started painting and painting, and as I did, I got better, and then people started paying me to do it, which was amazing. And because it made me so happy, I realized that was kind of a joy that I could share with other people. And so that's why I really like facilitating mural painting workshops, because I get to share a little bit of what I learned about painting murals, which is that it can make you really happy. Just
yeah, so definitely you shared that with the process of making a mural, but then also once the mural's up, the joy that it gives to so many people just having it around. And I know I can speak for the mural that's here in the Learning Center, which we'll see in a second. But that how much joy it's given from people, myself included, just walking by it every day. So when we started out, we wanted to make sure that we brought many, many voices into the process. So Kay invited 4 different artists. Do you want to say their names?
Yeah. So we had Kevin, who goes by the moniker Alchemy. We had Shane, who he actually his moniker is maybe too rude to say, actually. Yeah. But they're both local graffiti writers in town, and also wonderful people. And then my friend Emily Thiessen also came on, and so it was myself and those 3 who were the the professional artists. And then we had a bunch of youth from the Foundry as well. And we all just worked together.
Foundry Victoria, which is a great organization in town, providing support for youth. So we worked with them and 4 of their youth there who wanted to be part of this process. So we had and then Sethlima as well, so that we have really had a really great group of us sort of envisioning what this would be. Throughout the process, a couple of themes of ideas of what it could look like came, and these are 3. You might recognize one in particular, Where's Waldo? So through our conversations, felt like we wanted it to be playful, but also meaningful. And so Where's Waldo? Chris Kennelly is in the center there, and MC Escher to the left there. So that sort of feeling of you get lost in this mural and you have to like travel through it. And then do you want to speak? So then this was an early sketch of what it was too. Kay, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So we got together and we were talking about like what museums have been in the past, how people feel in museums, what people like about museums, what makes people uncomfortable about museums. We walked around the museum and took pictures. We did all this stuff. And coming from all that, we did all these sketches and we came up with a map of the dream museum, this map of this like fantastical future museum that is everything that we would want a museum to be, which we thought was a nice aspirational thing to have in the Learning Center to guide the RBCM forward. And so all of these little pieces are based on sketches that came out of the workshop portion of like we basically did a bunch of drawing games and like while we were contemplating these ideas, and then came up with this little scene.
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna, yeah, please. Actually, Sethlima, I'm gonna move to my cell phone, my other phone, and then I think it will be easier for people to hear you. So hold on just a second. Let me transfer to my. Hold on just a second. I'm just going to go to the other phone.
And as Chris is doing that, we just had a question in the chat. What does mural art mean? Like, what is mural art?
What is mural art? Well, that is an excellent question. I certainly have a lot to say about it, but I'm wondering if there's anybody, is there anybody else in the chat that wants to say what mural art means to them? I'll give a couple of seconds and then I'll get into it. What does mural art mean to you? Okay, so generally mural art is simply painting on walls, painting on the sides of buildings. And but it's not always, it doesn't always have to be paint. Sometimes people, for example, paint like moss seeds on the sides of walls, and then moss will grow in the shape of a painting. Or sometimes people do murals on the sides of like boats, and so it's not exactly a boat. But oftentimes you're using architecture and you're using a plate as your canvas, which is so interesting because instead of just being this like white box or a piece of paper that can go anywhere, it's the side of a house. So it's always going to be in the same place. And that can be really inspiring. So mural art means just painting huge things on walls, basically.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that answer.
Yeah.
So I've made my way over. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. And Sethlima, I have my other phone here too. So you wanted to say something? Would you like to speak next? Okay, good. Great. Good, I'm glad. So what we're gonna do, So this is the mural. So this is what this is what we came up with. So in this wall that was white and kind of ugly, now it's beautiful. So I wonder, Kay, if you wanted to give a little, and Sethema, if you want to give a little, well, actually, let's start, Sethema, if you would like to begin, because we wanted to make sure that there was a proper welcome here on the wall, since the museum is located on the traditional territories of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. We wanted to make sure that the Lekwungen language was front and center on this wall. So do you want to speak about that, Sethema?
What did you want me to speak of?
Oh, just the welcome that we're looking at right now on the screen.
I'm sorry, I'll have to jog my memory.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the one that's sort of similar to HOIO?
Yeah, that's right. HOIO.
Like, how are you?
Yeah.
That was the normal greeting from the Salalum to one another, no matter who you saw. HOIO. And you shake their hand. Did you hear me?
Yeah, for sure. So each a while and you shake your hand. And maybe everyone out there on Facebook, on Facebook Live and in the Zoom room can just speak that out as well, each a while. What you're looking at on the screen right now is it written, but that's the greeting. So how are you? The mural is putting its hand out to shake your hand, saying each a while. And then, yeah, Kay, where would you like to begin in the tour of the mural?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, we just talked about the Lekwungen greeting that's on there. So
Yeah,
we can also talk about the response that's up there.
for sure.
Shane, the artist Shane, who was part of the project, he's from Colourful First Nation. And when he was walking through the museum, he was really excited to see a greeting in his language in the museum. And I think that was like one of the more meaningful things that he saw, kind of felt like representation to him. So he wrote his greeting and we wrote it as kind of a call and response, Lekwungen and Clohus. So that's that piece there. Just below, we see this fox who's perched on the doorstop and he's holding a frame in front of his face. So that's about self-representation, which is a theme that came up a lot in our conversations, and we visually represented it a lot of different ways. So that fox is representing himself in the museum, exactly how he wants to be represented. Below that, we have the door. And there we have a portrait of Sethema's grandfather wearing a bowler hat. And Sethema's grandfather, Sethema, I would love for you to speak on this as well if you would like. But he would tip his bowler hat as sort of a respectful greeting. So we wrote a tip of the hat to you. And it's just kind of like almost this portion of the mural where Sethema's grandfather is tipping his bowler hat to people who are entering the space as a way of saying hello. Sethema, would you like to add to that, to speak about your grandfather?
Back in their day, that's right, it was called doffing the hat, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, doffing that. Yeah.
One of utmost respect that gentleman did when, no matter who they passed, but especially females, the older ones, you're called doffing the hat to show respect and what we call courtesy. Because it saddens me that no matter where I go, especially in restaurants where you have Chanelo and well-respected people. It's not just this kind of hat, the baseball cap, any kind of hat. People don't do that anymore.
Mm.
I would really love to see that brought back. You know, it's just another way of showing your love and respect for somebody's Chanelo, which we were taught from a time I could walk and talk. You were taught all these things from when you're in the womb. The Chanelo would talk to you, and I was raised, this is my grandfather, but my grandma, Sasama, my great-grandparents, Tom and Alice James. I was so blessed to be brought up by so many. Uncle Hubert was another one. I wore a hat like my grandfather. He was adopted into the family by my great-grandfather. And I can remember doing that. The tip of the hat.
Mm-hmm.
No matter where we were or who we saw. The hat just slightly tipped. Similar to Itoyo, but without the words. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And also when we were meeting about the mural, you were showing us photographs and telling us that story. And out of that, we asked whether you would feel comfortable if that was shown in the mural, because it seems like a really important part of the mural is that symbol of respect for us each to show respect to each other.
Yes.
So there's that, and then where would you like to go? Where should we go next, Kay?
Yeah, I love what Sethema just shared, and I think it was about like kind of like greeting from a sense of warmth and love and dignity. And okay, why don't we just go a little to the left and we'll talk about this little scene with these foxes. And they're as you can see, they're out. If you pull a little back, they're kind of in the museum and kind of out of the museum. And that was like a visual trick that we wanted to be that we really wanted to incorporate. Like if you look at Escher's painting, which we kind of based this on, they're sort of like tricky to the eye. You're like, am I inside or am I outside? And the meaning of having this little scene, this picnic happen in a place that could be inside or outside is reminding us that the things that you see in a museum, most of the time were created for some use outside of a museum. And that these are things that belong to people or belonged to people, and that were very special to people and had their uses and their roles in life. And so here's a fox who's using his fox teapot and having a little fox picnic on a picnic blanket made of stars. And so our hope for the Dream Museum is that people can see these items within a context that's respectful to the owners, and where the people who actually have these things that are so special that we all want to look at, that those things can still be looked at and touched and owned and celebrated by the people who are connected to them. And then here we see that same fox with his same teapot, but this time he's like just kind of hanging out with it and admiring it in the museum. And that's because some people actually feel honored when their special things are in museums, being taken care of and having the world see them. And our hope for the Dream Museum is that it's always like that, that people feel really honored to have their things in the museum. And that's kind of within a context where people don't always necessarily feel honored by the relationships that they have with a museum when their special things are there. you know, that consent is not always there. And our idea for the Dream Museum is that it's a place where that consent is there. And below we have this this camas flower bed, and there are different camas flowers of different ages. Some are just little sprouts, and then there's this big one who's telling his life story, who's telling their life story, from going from a little sprout without a flower to a little flower to a big flower. And you can see that this little flower is kind of amazed by this story, and then this newly sprouted sprout looks like he's having an idea, like he's thinking, oh, maybe this is something I can do. And so that's kind of representative of how a dream museum is a place where you can like have this intergenerational exchange that can be so nice for so many people. Like it can be a place to tell your life story and to feel heard. It can be a place to like meet people who are similar to you or inspiring to you, and to get inspired by their life story. And so hopefully a museum can be a place of that kind of conversation and exchange. And then you've got this little guy, and sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, no, and I was just going to say that also, like in terms of exchange, early on when we were thinking about this, or when the first idea was that it was sunflowers,
Yeah.
and then Sethlima said, no, it needs to be camas, which we were like, yes, great, that's because camas is so important on this land. So that was part of that exchange and going back and forth and sort of figuring out, yes, it wanted it to be flowers and plants, but what flower and plant should it be? So.
That's an excellent point, Chris. And I thank Sethlima very much for that contribution. And I think it is one great example of how this mural would not be nearly as good without every piece that every collaborator brought. That dialogue and really coming together with all of our ideas ended up generating a much nicer piece of art and a much deeper and richer piece of art than I could have ever made by myself. And Sethlima's contribution there was really incredible, because I think it's so much better with the camas flowers. And then we've got this little guy here. He's painting his signature on a wall. Once again, it's kind of about self-representation, about like a living museum, a museum that can be a space of creation, a space of community creation where people can come and make something themselves that can be seen and celebrated and documented for everybody else. And then moving to the right, we've got another little fella who's doing some artwork. Yeah, this is a Martian. And in contrast with the camas flowers, we were thinking about like stories that might be unfamiliar, you know, alien, strange, and you know, and how different people have these very different life experiences, and being able to come and self-represent and say, this is my story, and to share it can help us see new perspectives. And then, yeah.
And I was going to add one thing, Kay, is that one of the youth from the Foundry, whenever we would do any kind of drawing activities, she would always be drawing aliens.
Yeah.
So we knew that there needed to be some aliens or some sort of other extraterrestrial creatures in this mural, just because of those sketching activities. So.
Yeah, Chris, thank you for reminding me of that. That's such a wonderful detail from this. And I had actually forgotten that little piece, but yeah, every single sketch, every single drawing activity we had an alien in it.
Yeah.
And so that's her permanent mark that she's left, and she knows it, which is great. And then we've got a third figure who's drawing on a wall, and this figure is writing "Honor Our Stolen Sisters" on the wall, referring to the missing and murdered Indigenous women in Canada. And even as a standalone message, I think it's really important to have that. It's important to have that message sort of reverberate wherever it can. And also zooming out, I think it's about how a museum can be a place to engage with important social issues. It doesn't have to be a sterile space, or like you don't have to like not speak up about things that are important just for the sake of having it be like an apolitical space or having like that be an aspiration. It can be a space where we really speak our truth and make the world a better place. And so that's an aspiration that we wanted to reflect with that. And then we have the mammoth, which we had to have because it's iconic, iconic Royal BC Museum stuff. And they're just kind of wandering through and visiting and having a little fun family time. I don't know.
It was yeah, it was interesting that like we were like, it needs to be a mammoth, but rather than the mammoth on display, the mammoths get to enjoy the museum too.
Yeah.
So having the museum in every possible way be an active space for everyone to have a way to enjoy it in their own way, and not just be on display, but be constantly like taking it in as well. So
I love that. Yeah, it's a lot more active and living, which is something that we were really trying to depict. And then does that conclude our tour basically? Yeah, like
I think so. And I
yeah.
saw one comment saying how much larger is it going to be, and it might be hard to get a sense of how large this is, but this is actually, when I go back to my computer, I'll show you a picture of Kay on a ladder, and it gives a sense of the scale of this wall, but this is pretty large. So I'm going to just leave.
Oop, we lost Chris. So
yeah, he's gonna go and switch back to his other computer.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
I don't know if he knows.
And I'm back now.
Okay, perfect.
And he's back.
You just have to turn your camera back on as well, Chris.
Yeah. Oh, it said you stopped it.
I did.
Can you start my video, Jenny? Okay, there it goes.
There it is.
Okay, great. We are back. So I know we're a little bit over. I just wanted to show just very quickly that picture of, so there's the wall. Oh, with the youth, also when we were sketching on paper, we also, like Kay had a great idea to just bring in spray paint so that they could just sort of practice just playing on a blank wall. So that's a picture of that. And then there's Kay and Kevin on ladders to get a sense of how big this is, and how like early on sketches, you could see the buildings of the community, the houses are starting to come there. And just under the buildings, you see a little display case, which ended up not being there. It was moved further up. So it's nice to see these sketches like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is another early version. And then what you saw. So this is a little chance to get a sense of how we created the mural, how we worked together, and what came out of it. And I'm really proud of what came out of it because of what you brought forward, Sathama, what you brought forward, Kay, what all the collaborators brought forward with this. So
what you brought forward too, Chris.
Oh, a little bit. And when we are not in a pandemic anymore and we can have a party at the museum again, which I'm really looking forward to when that happens. We're going to have a big party in the Learning Center, and we hope everyone that's out there can join in and come to our party at the Learning Center and do an official proper opening where we're inviting inviting everyone in to see it in person. So we were going to do some drawing, but I just see that we're over time. So, but Kay, do you want to like a few sort of things to consider when you're, because after this session you can draw and sort of create the beginning of what your mural would look like. Kay, do you have some suggestions on what to think about when you're starting a process of creating a mural?
Oh, when you're starting the process of creating a mural, if you have a wall in mind, you can always draw the outline of what the shape of that wall is, and that'll help you think about the wall itself and what shape it is and what you want to put on it. And you can think about what's around it. For example, with the map of the Dream Museum mural that we just saw, I noticed that all of the chairs and all of the furniture in the room were turquoise and blue. And so at the beginning, I was like, at least it has to match all of this turquoise and blue that's around, you know? So it's nice to think about the spot. And if you're just thinking of something that you want to kind of be your signature that you want on a lot of walls, think of something that you like to draw and then draw it like 20 times in a row. That's something that you can do today. So if you like to draw a bird, take out a piece of paper and draw 20 birds. And the first couple of times, maybe experiment with different ways that you can draw the bird, and then just try for repetition, because that's going to get your muscle memory really good. So you're always going to know how to draw the bird. It's going to be right there in your hand. Your hand will know how to do it. And then when you find yourself in front of a wall with some paint, you'll just be ready to go. And it could be a bird, it could be a smiley face, it could be a flower, it could be your name, and writing it in a cool way. So that's something you could do today.
Yeah. And another time, maybe we can have a whole session just starting from scratch of drawing a mural. But we wanted to show off what was created. So thank you, Kate. Sethama, thank you so much for all your involvement in this and for always being a dear friend. Do you want to have any final words, Sethama, that you'd like to say?
Actually, two things, if you don't mind. Do we have time?
Sure.
Coming back to the canvas, that was a trading commodity all up and down the island. We used it to cook jamik. My great-grandma and my grandma used to boil it or bake it. It was used much like a potato, but it was used to treat diabetes back in the States. Way back then, it was unheard of, diabetes. Just within the past 40, 50 years, it's escalated. Anyway, Thomas was highly praised, highly valued among my people. The other one that Kay mentioned was the missing murdered women. I would like also to include in that the Indian residential schools that were there, the Indian hospitals here on this island. There was two Berlin residential schools across Terminus Bay, the Indian Hospital, way up across what was called Malaspina College, which is called what? VIU. Chris?
VIU, yep. Vancouver Island University.
Yeah, that's the one. It was right across there. I would like, especially those, because it was much more 100 times worse than residential school. Please always remember, both in prayer, along with the missing women. So important.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chris.
Great. Thank you so much, Sethama. And thank you for bringing that forward as well. So Kay and Sethema, for everyone out in the Zoom room, for everyone on Facebook Live, thank you so much for joining us. And we really look forward to when we can meet together again in person. We'll have lots of good food, probably music. We had, last year when we were going to do an opening, we had plans for bands and like we'd make a big party out of it. So when we do celebrate the mural, we'll also be celebrating being able to gather again together. So thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Nice to see you, Sethema.